I think that when you do too much too soon, you run the risk of demeaning yourself, because you don't know if that's your in partner, right? So if you allow that person in to experience all of you too soon, what happens if it doesn't work out? Then you have another person that knows where all the dead bodies are buried, so to speak. And so I think it's really, really important to slow down, not give people too much of you, especially if they don't deserve it.
By the way you lead me and never leave me, the kind of love that always fills me when I look at you. I even see me. Let me feel your love. By the way you lead me and never leave me, the kind of love that always fills me when I look at you. I even see me. Let me feel your love. There's a kind of love that you.
Hey y'all, it's Shawana Stevens with the Life and Podcast. Today I'm actually talking about red flags in dating. And I'm sure everybody has heard about Tessa in her marriage to the pathological liar. And so today I actually want to delve into those red flags. Now I know we do, watching TV, listening to music, all that kind of stuff. It makes you want to be in a relationship. But I think it's important to listen to what homegirl had going on so we can make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. So I want to talk about the first red flag that I find in her story, and that would be doing way too much too soon. I think when you are dating and when your intentions are pure, right? Because I always say that dating is preparation for marriage. So when you are dating, um, I think that's the time to learn as much information as possible. And I know we talk about the fact that we're learning someone's representative, because people really don't, people really aren't who they really are when you're dating. I have to say, I think that's one of the reasons why we should slow down a bit, not do too much too soon. I think in this particular situation, we find that she moved in with the guy within 2 weeks because of the pandemic. Now, um, I feel like 2 weeks ain't enough, sis. I feel like 2 weeks is really you still getting to know who the person is. And I don't know about y'all, but I ain't about to lay down or live with nobody that I really don't know. And so I think in this particular situation, 2 weeks was way too soon. Again, I want to say, when your intentions is to get married, because most of us date because we want to be married. I think when you are trying to be married, you want to take your time, because you know you want to take your time, but then you also don't want to waste time. You have no time to waste. And in this particular situation, and what I'm talking about is dating. When you're dating, you don't have time to waste, so you take your time. You know what I mean? And that makes no sense, literally, but in the long run, it makes sense, because you don't want to have to go or make a lot of missteps. You take your time so you can get to know as much as possible. And I think that when you do too much too soon, you run the risk of demeaning yourself, because you don't know if that's your in partner, right? So if you allow that person in to experience all of you too soon, what happens if it doesn't work out? Then you have another person that knows where all the dead bodies are buried, so to speak. And so I think it's really, really important to slow down, not give people too much of you, especially if they don't deserve it. So that's my first red flag. Doing too much too soon. I think we should slow down. I think we should. The Bible says, "In all that getting, get a good understanding." And I think when you don't go into dating thinking that this is the one. Go into dating thinking that this is a possibility. And I think when you lay down too soon, you can't see good. So, in order to make the best determination as to whether this person is right for you, it's best not to get all tangled up. I remember telling my nephew one time, um, for every hour that you talk to this person, talk to God too, right? And what that does is It allows you to actually see the person in the best light. Because if we're really consulting God about the person that we're dating, we want to talk to God about what we saw, right? And so I think that's a good practice, and I want to share that with you. That for every minute, or you know every 30 minutes that you talk to a person, spend some time talking to God. And the reason being is so that your eyesight can be good, right? Um, I think as Christians, um, sometimes we don't discern the best. But the reason we don't discern the best is because we don't have when our eyesight is in the wrong place. Our eyesight, we're not able to see as best as as best as we should be able to, because we're not even in the right headspace to see. And so that's number one red flag: doing too much way too soon. And when I see someone trying to go too fast with me, I'm already suspicious, because I'm wanting to know, wait, if your desire is to be with me for the long haul, why are you rushing me, right? I think that's something to think about as well. Number one, too much too soon. All right. So the second red flag that I want to talk about is um, not listening to your inner self, not listening to your own offenses towards your standards. I think as individuals, and especially as Christians, we have a standard. We have a foundation. And I think Ressa talks about the fact that her foundation was in the church. She she was a Christian. Despite where she was in her relationship with the Lord, she had a foundation, and she keeps saying in her story that she knew better. And I think it's important to say that when we're dealing with someone, we should never allow our standards to be offended for the sake of having that person in our lives. I've learned that, sometimes when I find myself doing a lot of bending and adjusting just for that person to be in my life, that's usually not the right person to be in my life. And I think that's one of the things that she talked about, not even wanting her family to know where she was in her relationship, because of the fact that she knew that it went against her standards. And so I want to make sure that we're having healthy conversations with ourselves about um, whether or not we are allowing our standards to be violated. Right. And so, yeah, I think that's a red flag. Whenever we find ourselves doing all the bending, um, we should take a step back and determine, because my belief is how a thing starts is always how it's going to end. And if we find ourselves doing all the bending in the beginning, we're going to end up doing all the beginning in the end. And so I think that's important to consider as well when we're dating. You ain't trying to do all the bending. You want to know, what is that person doing? But on the other end, you want to make sure that you don't feel uncomfortable in the relationship the whole time. It's like wearing a pair of shoes that's too small. How long are you going to be able to wear those shoes before you just fall out? So we have to consider that when we're in relationships. If it doesn't fit, then how long are you going to be able to do that when it doesn't fit, or when it doesn't feel good? So that's my second tip. Allowing your standards to be violated, that's always a red flag to me. All right, so the next red flag that I want to talk about is not meeting people that is important. You know what I mean? Like when you're dating someone, if you're dating a person and you ain't met nobody, you might want to rethink that. I remember dating this guy, and I had not met anybody in his personal life. I had talked to people on the phone, But at some point, you need to actually be able to touch and feel the people in that person's life, especially if they say you mean a lot to them. And I think when that is the case, I think she talks about the fact that she had never met his family. You know what I mean? She had never met anyone in the family, and I think that's a huge red flag. And she makes a point to mention that she allowed him to meet everybody. So I would want that same thing. And I think what that communicates to you is that this person not only is important to you, um, or that you are important to them, but also they are proud of who you are to them. And I think that's important. So that's the other thing that I would say. When we're in relationships and we don't have an opportunity to meet the people that's in your significant other's life, I think that is screaming um, run to me. It's screaming run because you want to make sure that you're able to see that person, not only who they associate themselves with, but how do they act with the people in their lives? Like, what is the dynamics in their relationships? You know what I mean? Like, you want to hear what other people say about the person that you're dating. You want to see who they are, not just with you. And the reason being is because you want to be able to see that person in all lights. You want to see that person in all temperaments, in all environments, before you commit to them. So that's my other one. And then lastly, the last red flag that I noticed was um, settled disappointment, is what I'm going to call it. Um, Risa Tisa talks about all of these different times where she felt disappointed, right? And you never want to be with somebody that feels okay with disappointing you, right? And you may say, okay, well, how would you know that they feel okay with disappointing you? If they keep doing it. If they keep disappointing you, that's a red flag to me, because people know when they disappoint you, right? They know when you are disappointed. And so to be okay with feeling that feeling of disappointment from somebody that you care about or somebody that you love too often, that's communicating something else to me that I don't necessarily want to allow to resonate for the long haul. You know what I mean? So I want to say that, like, when we find ourselves in relationships and we feel like we keep getting disappointed, and you allow them to know that you are disappointed and they keep doing it to you, at some point they should want to protect your feelings. At some point they should want to protect your heart just as much as you want to protect your heart. And so that's a red flag for me. It's one thing if it happens today and it happens again, you know, the next 6 months. But if it's every week, nah, we got a different situation. Houston, we got a problem. And so that's the last red flag for me. Settled disappointment, especially in a relationship that's new. That's just too much for me. So I hope that these red flags were helpful to you. But I also want to know, what other red flags did you hear in the Risa Tisa story? I want to hear what they are. So I want you to go to the comments. I want you to comment. I want to start a conversation about this, because I think that this is definitely important. I think that we want more relationships in our world. We talk about what the world needs more is love, but the only way we're gonna do it is if we talk about the rough side of relationships and make sure we capitalize on those rough sides by making sure they don't happen again. So, red flags, stay up.